Okay. Today, this is Terry Wager. Today's date is September 4th. I do believe it's the 4th, although I haven't actually checked, but I'm going. September 4th of 2014. The sting operator, I'm reported on my blogs, victim of murder conspiracy, and the sting operatives that are surrounding me, / aka the murderers of people in this family down below, these fucking sting operatives. They're staging street theater performances for the last 2-3 days. That blue vehicle that's right there in the parking lot, they're using that vehicle in their sting operation. They know I'm disabled. They know I'm on SSI. I gotta sit down. It's not easy for me to stand or to walk. They're ending that. My wife was having an affair with a fucking cop. That cop was setting my ass up as a fucking pedophile, and that cop was acting as a fucking double. And everybody in the Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriff knew about it and approved of it and was assisting them in it. And everybody at my wife's place of employment knew about it. When I uncovered their conspiracy, I uncovered their conspiracy by literally catching my wife hooking her daughters up with Officer Eric Carlson in the presence of over a dozen Eastport Walmart employees, and am discovering at that very moment that Officer Eric Carlson, the brunette, the cop that my wife was sleeping with, Officer Eric Carlson, the brunette, dyed his fucking hair so he could act as a fucking double. And this was open knowledge in the entire store. And when I saw this, I was in shock, and I didn't say anything. And I just walked down an aisle all by myself in shock. And while I'm standing in this aisle in shock, I could hear the Eastport Walmart employees. Because my wife, Joan Wager, and Officer Eric Carlson, and one of our daughters named Megan Wager, they walked off together down an aisle after I caught them. You know, they walked together away from me, trying to act like nothing happened and nothing's going on. That's what they were trying to act like. And, of course, I'm catching this in the act. I'm catching them in the act. And I walked down a separate aisle in shock, stunned over what I just witnessed. My wife hooking our daughters up with a cop that is a fucking lookalike of me, that deliberately changed his appearance so he could impersonate me, and was dressed like me. Not in the exact same clothes that I was wearing that day, but he had clothing that was just like mine. I knew damn well everybody in that store was calling him by a nickname Double Click, because he's a twin to somebody, but nobody wanted to tell me who the person was a lookalike to. Everybody was trying to hide that from me. Everybody. My wife, our daughters, they were trying to hide that from me. Eastport Walmart employees were trying to hide that from me. And as I'm standing in this aisle by myself, in shock over what I just overheard and witnessed, that dozen-plus Eastport Walmart employees were standing there. They were in a meeting, standing by the cashiers, you know, in the front of the store. They were having a brief meeting with a manager, and Officer Eric Carlson happened to be amongst that group of people. And my wife and her daughter approached Officer Eric Carlson, and they were immediately talking about their affair, or Officer Eric Carlson was, he didn't realize that I was there and that I was like 20 feet behind my wife. And my wife was shushing him by saying, "He's behind me, he's behind me, he's behind me," referring to me. Well, everybody in this group heard that. Everybody, not just me, everybody in this group heard that. And my wife and Officer Eric Carlson and Megan walked off together and went down an aisle to chat and to figure out what to do. And they're not sure if I caught them or not. My wife was trying to hide it from me because she wasn't yelling it, but she wasn't whispering it either when she said, "He's behind me, he's behind me, he's behind me," referring to me. So, anyway, while I'm standing there in shock, all those Eastport Walmart employees, their meeting ended because of this. And there was a manager in that meeting, a Walmart manager, and they didn't disperse. Their meeting didn't end and then disperse. Their meeting ended, but they did not disperse, and instead we're all looking over at me and talking about me, and they were talking about what just happened, and they're saying shit like, "Does he know?" They're looking over at me, and they're saying to each other, "Does he know?" And they're saying, "Did he find out?" And as this is going on, as this was going on, other Walmart employees walked up to this large group of Walmart employees, and they took one look at me as they're approaching the large group. The employee that's walking up to this group is looking over at me because the group is looking over at me and talking about me. And as that employee approached that group, he said, "Is there going to be a fight? Does he know? Did he find out?" So this was open knowledge at Eastport Walmart in April of 2005 that my wife is having an affair with a cop, that the fucking cop dyed his fucking hair, and that the son of a bitch was acting as a double of me, and everybody was flaunting it around me by saying his nickname around me. Everybody was flaunting it and hinting at it, and everybody was trying to hide it from me. When I tried to warn people about this, that's when my wife poisoned me, and that's when the Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriffs covered it up at the hospital by using their fat-ass, donut-sucking power of influence with doctors, because the whole goddamn government's fascist. Anytime cops want to cover up a poisoning, they just go up to the poor victim's doctor, and then they label the victim as a bad guy until the doctor gets the hint to not help that person. And then guess what? No toxicology test gets taken, and the doctor makes no mention on their paperwork that the person's poisoned. And that's how they covered it up. That's how they covered up me being poisoned. Well, I am currently surrounded by this is 2014. I'm currently surrounded by police sting operatives and their civilian whores with their civilian brats that are being coached and directed to perform street theater performances, just like a mime would. What do mimes do on the street? They do street performances. Well, that's what sting operatives do. And guess what these pedophile cops and their civilian whores and their whores brats do? They perform for video surveillance. That's what they do. That's how they frame people. Well, I'm disabled. I'm on SSI. I have to leave here to go to the bank to get the SSI money and to go grocery shopping because I have no food in my home. And every time as I get ready in my apartment to leave, as I'm getting my gear together, I get my backpack, which is essentially my wallet, and my cane, and I have to get my grocery cart right there. And, I have to actually get ready for it. Every time I get ready for it, these son of a bitches right down below, every fucking time, are preparing for it, and they go out to their fucking car, that blue car that I just pointed out, and they open all the fucking doors, and they open the the hatchback thing and shit on a damn thing. And then they fucking leave all that shit open, and they leave one of their brats in the car. And they instructed their brats anytime I walk past to yell out and shit. So they're staging this. They're literally staging this and waiting for it. Literally. Every fucking time. So they have me under illegal video surveillance inside my home, and they can see when I'm getting ready. Because the moment I get ready, that's when they do this. The moment I get ready to leave my apartment, they do this. It's like they're getting into position. It's like they have me under illegal video surveillance in my home. They can see when I'm getting ready to leave. And then as I'm getting ready to leave, I can hear them getting into position. They go out there, they open all their car doors, they open their hatchback, and they have one of their brats sit in a damn vehicle. They do this every time I'm trying to get ready to leave. It's blatant. It's obvious. And I'm surrounded by people that don't give a fucking shit. They fucking crippled me. They were poisoning me when I was a plasma donor. So they're fucking serial killers. They had Virgil Minor poisoned and debilitated, and he stayed that way for months until he died. Well, the moment I came back to Portland, Oregon, they immediately attacked me and debilitated me. And the whole time I'm debilitated, my wife was palling around and sleeping around with the county sheriffs in the Portland Pedophile Police Department and was palling around with Officer Eric Carlson the entire fucking time. And everybody was trying to hide it. They're guilty of fucking murders. These people are guilty of fucking murders. They're using sting tactics to frame people so that they could vilify people on video surveillance and or for photogenic photo purposes. They deliberately lay in wait. It's like an ambush. They want to frame. They're trying to frame me for Officer Eric Carlson's crimes, and he spent 2 fucking years. He spent 2 years sleeping around with my wife and palling around with our daughters, along with his partners, of which one of Officer Eric Carlson's partners got one of our daughters pregnant, by the way. Yeah. So essentially the Portland Police and County Sheriffs are womanizers, and they were sleeping around with my wife and our daughters. And since they had my wife and daughters turned against me, they all got the brilliant idea to frame me as a pedo and then murder me off. Not to mention they were going to frame me for some of their shit that they're guilty of. And this is how they do it. They use sting tactics. They take over the surrounding apartments. They take over the apartment that's next door here. They'll take over the apartment that's just on the other side of that wall over here next to me there. They take over the apartment directly below mine. And the apartment that's kitty corner this way, down below, is the apartment manager. The apartment manager used to live on the building on the far side of the courtyard. But because she's assisting these sting operatives in framing me, and is essentially, she essentially is a civilian sting operative, she has been helping and assisting them in setting me up. So she moved from that apartment building to this apartment building so that she could testify against me. So in essence, I'm surrounded by sting operatives that are not going to bear witness to anything and be on my side, even though I'm the victim. I'm surrounded by sting operatives that are going to testify for the Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriffs and lie for their asses and set me up for their shit. And like I said, they have me under illegal video surveillance. So anytime they see I'm getting ready to leave, I can hear the sting operatives leaving their apartments, and because the walls around here are thin. If the people down below, if they open their door to leave, I can fucking hear that. And they go right out to their vehicle. They put one of their brats in the vehicle, and then they open all the doors, and then the adults go back inside and they leave their brat in that vehicle because they're waiting for me to leave, because that's the way I have to go. That's the direction I have to go to leave this building. So they deliberately place a brat in a fucking vehicle. They deliberately place a brat in a fucking vehicle when they know I'm getting ready to leave. And they're doing this for their video surveillance purposes and for their photogenic photo purposes, because they obviously want to back up false pedophile charges against me, and they want to make me look like a bad guy. They're desperate to make me look like a bad guy, because they're the ones that are guilty of fucking murders. They're the ones guilty of using a double. They're fucking desperate to frame my ass. And anybody and everybody that's connected to a fucking cop or a county sheriff officer is a fucking sting operative. Every fucking apartment manager in this fucking city is a goddamn sting operative. Why do you think this country's so fucking fascist? Why do you think this country is so goddamn, so much of a police state? Why is that? Because the fucking government has taken over everything. They've taken over apartment buildings. All apartment buildings are, even if they're owned privately by corporations, such as this supposed apartment building is, it's supposedly owned by a corporation, the apartment managers that they hire to run the place just so happens to be civilian police sting operatives. So police unofficially, through landlords and through apartment managers, police unofficially run almost all apartment buildings. And apartment managers actually help and assist police and county sheriffs in framing people. My wife's fuck buddies in law enforcement gets a warrant and takes over the surrounding apartments surrounding mine, and my apartment manager mums the word to me because she's a fucking civilian sting operative. Because she's she's an accomplice to murder, she's an accomplice to premeditated murder and attempted murders. Multiple counts. Because it's my wife's fuck buddies in law enforcement and their buddies that are doing this shit. They can pretend and act all official all they fucking like. It doesn't change the fact that they were sleeping around with my wife and daughters. They were directing and coaching them in 2005 as to how to set me up, and in 2006. And they used their police powers to take over the surrounding apartments. And, of course, the apartment managers go along with this shit and help and assist police in this shit, which makes them accomplices. If the cops are committing crimes, then guess what? If she's going to help their ass, then she's an accomplice. She's an accessory. Now, I'm going to be leaving here very soon, because I have no choice but to go to the bank and go grocery shopping. But I'm pointing out the fact they're goddamn fucking sting operatives, and they're goddamn using brats in their goddamn sting operation. They're a bunch of traffickers and exploiters. Yeah, your fucking cops and your county sheriff officers traffic brats, and they exploit brats for their video surveillance purposes, so that they can frame people. And they literally use street theater performances. In other words, they'll pretend that they're tenants and perform for video surveillance outside. when in fact they're sting operatives. So, you know, they might. Now, this apartment right here, the one right next to where my table here and stuff is, and this wall that's closest to where I'm sitting here, that's the Portland Police Department's renting that apartment. They fill that apartment with Portland police officers that are in plain clothes. And in an apartment that's kitty corner down below that way, they have a retired Portland police officer, or he's either a retired Portland police officer or a retired Multnomah County Sheriff officer. He's retired law enforcement. He tries to hide that. And for the most part, the one that's directly over here, I know I can't speak for the people that's there now. As far as I'm concerned, they are in fact police officers. But the person that was there was some badass dude. Under the belief that he was a civilian, but he was a civilian that's connected to law enforcement. In other words, he's a civilian sting operative. In other words, he's either a buddy to somebody in authority, or he's a relative to somebody in authority, something of that nature. And because of that, police do, in fact, use their civilian buddies and their civilian girlfriends in sting operations. Or they'll use their relatives, for instance. So I'm under the belief that that's what that person was. A whole bunch of people. A whole bunch of these sting operatives moved out, and a whole slew of new ones moved in right after I caught them on video at this apartment building, placing brats in front of me as I go down the stairs, and then they make the pedo accusation as I walk away. In other words, just the mere act of me going down my stairs, they use that act of me going down my stairs as a way of framing me for their video surveillance. Because they'll literally play, as I'm going down the stairs, that's when they place their brats in front of me at the bottom of the stairs for their video surveillance footage and for their photogenic photo purposes. And then, of course, they use that kind of shit so that they could, so that they can have photogenic evidence, or, they can show a photo of me going down the stairs, and it shows a photo. The photo will show brats at the bottom of the stairs, and then they'll say, "See, he's a pedo. See, he's a pedo." This is how they turn people against me behind my back. But they're not there at the bottom of the stairs when I start going down the stairs. I'm disabled. I can't go down these stairs fast. I have to use a cane. There's my cane right there. I have to use a fucking cane. I'm disabled. They poisoned me. I'm partially fucking paralyzed from being poisoned by these people. I cannot go down those stairs quickly, and they fucking know it. And when the moment I take my first step down the stairs, they usually place a brat at the bottom of the stairs. And it's a repeated process. And when I caught them on video doing this, a whole bunch of them moved out, and they moved in a whole new crew of sting operatives. In other words, law enforcement is still renting the apartments, but they're filling the apartments mostly with their civilian operatives. A few of the apartments is still being rented by law enforcement. The one directly on either side now, as far as I'm concerned, are both now maintained and filled with Portland police officers. The people that are directly below is also they also have Portland police officers in there, but they have a civilian family that stays in there that are the ones that are deliberately performing for photogenic photo purposes, and they're performing for video surveillance. And they're using their own brats in their fucking sting operations. In order for you to leave this apartment, I have to take these stairs. And when I reach the bottom of the stairs, I'm literally right alongside the fucking apartment that's right directly below me. And that's the apartment that the police have civilian operatives in there. In other words, they have one of their whores that has brats in that apartment. And she deliberately and intentionally places her brats either at the bottom of the stairs when I start going down the stairs, or she places her brats in her vehicle and then leaves the brat in her vehicle as she goes back inside. And she instructs her brats to scream when I go down the stairs and try to walk this way because I have to go to the bus stop. So in other words, in order for me to exit this area, I can't exit this area without this bitch placing one of her brats in the way for their video and photogenic photo purposes. And she's coached their brats to scream when I walk by. So they do this for video surveillance purposes, and they do this for photogenic photo purposes. It's how law enforcement frames people, and they've been doing this to people for fucking decades. And the people they frame this way don't get trials, they get murdered. It's how law enforcement murders people. Anybody that law enforcement pedophiles, and that's their term, they use that term. Any person law enforcement pedophiles, they don't get trials, they just get vilified and then murdered. It's a form of murder by law enforcement. And this fucking apartment manager, she's a civilian, but she's still a sting operative. She works for them, she takes orders for them. My wife and daughters, ever since they began sleeping around with these cops, they became sting operatives. They work for them. They follow their orders and their instructions. They're coached and directed by law enforcement how to perform for their illegal video surveillance purposes so that they can vilify their targets. And it's not because I'm an important person. It's not because I'm a whistleblower. It's not because of political reasons. It's because law enforcement has always done it this way, and it's sport to them. It's a fucking sport to these people. They enjoy doing this shit. All these idiots on the internet that sit there and say, why would people waste so much time and energy trying to set one person up? It's ridiculous. No, it's not ridiculous because that's all law enforcement does. That's all they do. You think law enforcement sits at a police station and waits for people to call to report a crime? Do you think police just drive around aimlessly on the streets with no plan or intent or have no operation going on or some sort? You honestly think that? Police frame people all the fucking time and they call it a sting. They use sting tactics to do this shit to people. And cops have so many people, their buddies, their relatives, their girlfriends. They have so many people that fucking lie for their ass that cops, anytime they fucking want, can have 20, 30 fucking civilians back up a bullshit allegation so that they can justify, throwing somebody, railroading somebody into prison or justify murdering somebody. They do this all the fucking time. And news reporters, you might as well deem news reporters as sting operatives because every single one of them lies for cops. They lie for police. News reporters go out of their way to conceal sting operations and sting tactics. They go way out of their way to hide the fact that law enforcement will take over, literally, if it's a small apartment building that has like 8 apartments or something, they'll literally take over the entire apartment building with their undercover officers and their civilian operatives in order to frame somebody. If it's a big place like this place here has probably got like 8, 16, 24, 32, around at least 50-something apartments here. So, they probably won't necessarily take over the whole, apartment area with their operatives, but they'll take over the whole half of this building surrounding me so that every single one of them can testify against me just because they're close. Just because they're close. So that's one of the reasons why police always surround their targets with sting operatives so that they can testify against the people they frame. Well, they need their civilian operatives for that, and that's generally what they use their civilian operatives for. They use their civilian operatives to back up their bullshit lies and their bullshit complaints and to make the complaints. But it's law enforcement that's funding everything and paying for the operation and directing everything that occurs. And it's the civilian operatives that follow law enforcement's instructions. So think of it, if you ever watched the old Mission Impossible TV show made back in the 60s, it's a good example of what a sting operation is. Although that TV show glorifies the sting operatives, notice how they never say on that show whether or not any of those people on that Mission Impossible TV show, whether or not they're law enforcement or not. But they are targeting people, and they actually even frame people. They'll set people up to get blamed for shit that they did. You know, like those Mission Impossible people on that TV show, they'll surround their target. They surround their target with their operatives. And then they'll stage things. They'll do things in order to make their target look like a bad guy. Now, of course, in the TV show, the people they're targeting actually are bad guys. You know, they're not really, you know, what you would call. But it's a good example of what a sting operation is. They surround you. Somebody points a finger and says, "We want this person targeted," and then a group of people targets that person. And that's essentially what a sting operation is. They took Mission Impossible, that TV series from the 60s. They took that off the air. I think they only had like 13 episodes of it or something. They took it off the air. It was a highly rated show when it was on TV back then, but they took it off the air anyway. And you know why? Because it came too close to home for law enforcement's liking. Because it actually reveals how organized people target people. It shows and demonstrated how organized people targeted people. In other words, that old Mission Impossible TV show, it came too close to home for law enforcement, and so law enforcement used their power of influence with the TV networks to have that show taken off. It wasn't taken off because of bad ratings. It had great ratings. The show was canceled because law enforcement wanted it canceled. And the reason why is because it just comes too close to home to what a sting operation actually is. And now, of course, the TV show didn't point out the fact that those operatives, those Mission Impossible operatives that were targeting people, they don't point out the fact that they're law enforcement. They just kind of leave that question up in the air now, don't they? And there's a reason for that, because they're not, you know, they know damn well they would have gotten some serious backlash from law enforcement if they did refer to those people as law enforcement. So law enforcement does not want people to know how organized law enforcement is and how corrupt they are. I mean, they don't want people to know that they'll illegally bug a person's home, and that they'll spy on people inside their homes, and they even use doubles and shit to stage and to commit crimes, and then they give their targets the blame. You ever see on the news or on TV how law enforcement loves to have their top-down view? Like if they show video surveillance footage of some people having a conversation, it's usually a top-down view. You know why? Because they're fucking using photo doubles. That's why. You never get a clear, and it's always fuzzy video surveillance. And you know why? Because they're using a double. Each and every fucking time. And everybody anybody that watches TV and watches news falls for that shit every fucking time. They'll use fuzzy-ass video surveillance footage. And they have a top-down view where you're basically seeing the tops of the heads of people sitting in a room somewhere talking. You know why they do that? Because they're using a double. Every fucking time they use doubles. Police have majorly adopted fuzzy video surveillance and photogenic photo use. They've been using photogenic photos on a regular basis since 1971 that I can testify to and describe in great detail to. Well, they also use fuzzy video surveillance too, but they don't use that as often because it's like I said, they generally use doubles to stage the crime, to commit the crime, and then they give their target the blame. They'll use a look-alike. You know, somebody that's not an exact. Hollywood uses that trick all the time, and moviegoers, always fall for that. Hollywood uses photo doubles all the time, or stunt doubles. They'll use stunt doubles, or they'll use photo doubles, or they'll use doubles where the face isn't necessarily being shown. In a scene like that, they'll use a double. In other words, somebody just looks similar to the star of the movie. A great example is how Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. If you've ever seen the special for it, the special making of the movie for that, if you bought the 2-disc special feature of the movie, you get all those extras and stuff like the behind the scenes making of the movie and all that sort of stuff. Well, they're really emphasizing the fact that they were majorly using doubles in the making of that movie, for Johnny Depp. And so the use of doubles is, and they even make mention of that too in the second Pirates of the, no wait a minute, it was the first Pirates of the Caribbean. If you bought the 2-disc special, where you can see the making of that movie, they as well make mention of the fact that they use doubles. They mention the stunt doubles that are doing the stunts. They mention the photo doubles or the scene doubles, where they'll have a double in a scene because it doesn't show Johnny Depp's face, so they'll just have somebody that looks like the person, dressed like him. They use doubles all the time. All the time. Well, what people don't realize or understand is law enforcement does the same fucking thing. The exact same fucking thing. And they laugh about it and they crack jokes about it, just like people in Hollywood do when they use doubles. They fucking laugh about it and they crack jokes about it and shit and don't give a fuck. They don't care. Because you know why? Because when law enforcement uses doubles to frame people, they usually do it to vilify them, not to give the person a trial, just to vilify them, to give them the blame for shit, and then they murder that person off, and then they fake justification. Literally, they'll fake justification. I don't have a gun. I don't have any weapons. But I know damn fucking full well that there's a common tactic local authorities use, and I'm sure it's a tactic that's used all over the United States of America. law enforcement will frame somebody the same way they're framing me. And then when they get me in a location where I'm isolated and nobody else is around, they'll just, 2 or 3 or 4 police cars will just swarm up, faking an emergency, and they'll jump out of their vehicle, and then they'll scream out loud, "Get on the ground, get on the ground." And of course, you'll be like, "What the fuck's going on?" I'm just standing there, not armed, not doing anything wrong, but they'll just sit there and go, "Get on the ground," and then they'll just they'll all open fire. They just all open fire. And then, bam, I'm dead. And guess what? They never show video surveillance usually of that. And what they usually show is what they'll do after that is they just tell the news media that criminal of some sort that they've already framed me. They'll point out crimes that they've already framed me for. And they'll say, yeah, there was a shootout, and they'll refer to it on the news as a shootout, even though I don't have a gun. I don't have any, they'll just pretend it's a shootout, and the news media will portray it as a shootout. And one of the officers will just fake an injury in order to frame the person they just murdered as a shooter. They'll fake an injury. And they'll even show, either a short video clip or they'll show a photo of the officer on the news. They'll show a photo of that officer in a hospital bed. That's all staged. The officer's not shot. The officers never have a wound like that in these situations. They just fake it so that they could frame the person they murdered as a shooter. And officers just fake it, and they have their buddies at the hospital back up the lie. And that's how they get away with it. That's how they get away with framing people as violent people or dangerous people. They just fake it. I mean, they're organized. Police are organized. They know how to take any honest, good individual and portray that person as a bad guy. They know how to do that. Do you hear the banging noise? I don't know if the cell phone picked it up, but if you heard the banging noise, that's the sting operatives down below. Every fucking time they open and close their door, they bang that damn door. Every fucking time. It's nothing for law enforcement to frame people. News media is literally... News media is bedfellows to law enforcement and backs up every fucking lie law enforcement tells. In other words, if law enforcement gangs up on somebody and murders somebody, the law enforcement covers it up by usually planting a weapon right after they kill their victim, and then they just tell the news media a bullshit story to justify the killing. And the news media, being the fascist brown-nosers that they are to law enforcement, will take their side of the story and publicize the living crap out of it on TV and all over the internet and portray their side of the story as if it's the facts. And never give anybody else's side of the story. If anybody's a witness and witnessed otherwise, they don't get any say. They don't get no airtime in challenging law enforcement in their lives. So news media, you should really consider them to be an extension of law enforcement. Law enforcement has literally incorporated news media into policing people. In other words, targeting people. If you think of every single news reporter as a civilian police sting operative, it starts to make sense when you realize they're lying about this, or they're downplaying what the cops did on that, or they're trying to cover for cops on this situation or that situation. It all starts to make sense. You start to realize, gee, how does a fascist country become fascist and do so openly and get away with it? And how do they hide and conceal it from the ignorant masses? How do they? Well, they do it by controlling the media. In other words, the government runs the media stations, the media networks, the same damn fucking way they run the police stations. It's all controlled, it's all run and regulated, and they're all part of the fascist system, so they all lie, and they don't care if they get caught in a lie either. You would think they would, but they don't. They don't give a rat's ass. They'll smirk at you. They'll smirk at you and say, "Prove it." They'll literally smirk at you and say, "Prove it." They don't give a fuck. They don't care if people find out how corrupt they are. They don't give a shit if people realize that organized cops are murdering people and framing people and are committing crimes themselves, and then they give their targets the blame. You know, they don't even give a fuck if they're caught in the act. They don't care if they're caught admitting. They'll just smirk at you and say, "Prove it." And you know why they smirk? Because there is no 911 call that exists that will get a fucking cop arrested. Calling 911 does not get one cop, let alone an entire sting operation, arrested. They know it, and they don't give a fuck because of it. The whole system, the whole goddamn emergency system we have in place is corrupt and fascist and run by fascists that lie for one another and they cover for one another. The police on a regular basis covers up poisonings. The police on a regular basis commits poisonings. The police will label people that they poison as drug addicts. They'll label the people they poison as people that take meth and shit like that. That's the kind of accusation. That's how they get away with murdering people, and they vilify their victims so that nobody will care. Law enforcement is in a constant state of attacking people, and they're organized. They're just like the KKK. They're organized. They're in an organization that's very similar in a sense. If you think of it as a clan, then it starts to make a lot more sense, because they're clan members. And clan members cover for clan members, and that's what they're doing. They cover for one another's asses all the time. If a cop murders somebody, the entire police department will lie for that cop. All the news media stations will lie for that cop. Anything and everything they can to cover for their own asses. And that's essentially what they are. And this is essentially a fascist country. And they're not really hiding it, but the news media keeps everybody. The public school system dumbs everybody down, keeps everybody ignorant of the fact that people are, especially people in government, people are organized. That means they back up one another and they cover for one another's asses regardless. And they don't want people to realize that people are organized and will lie to cover for one another. They don't want people to think in those terms. So schools have literally brainwashed people into forgetting the fact that government tends to be organized, and people that are a part of government tends to be organized and lies and covers for one another. And they want people to have a very short memory when it comes to that sort of thing. And that's how they hide and conceal the fascism, and why even when law enforcement is caught committing murders or they're framing people, generally it all gets whitewashed and covered up because nobody cares, for one thing. News media isn't going to publicize it for another, and so their shit just goes on and continues. And it's like, you know, they were doing this shit to me and my family in the 70s. And I was too young back then to understand that I was being targeted by a sting back then. So the Multnomah County Sheriff's and the Portland Police Department have a history of targeting me and my family since 1971. And the reason me and my family got targeted then, which I didn't understand. I had all the information needed to know what the fuck was going on back then, but I was too damn young to understand what I was witnessing back then. We had a neighbor that lived 2 houses away from us, and a neighbor family that they were Mormons. They lived 2 houses away from us. My mother was acquaintance to the mother of that family, and they had brats of their own, so we had those similarities in common. And well, that particular family was the Dunham family. That particular family has connections with the Multnomah County Sheriffs, and they actually help people in the county sheriffs to frame people. And when I was 6 years old, I witnessed the Dunham's family and the Multnomah County Sheriff's framing a neighbor that lived a block away from us. I witnessed it. I witnessed them talking about it. I witnessed them celebrating it after they got done. But I was only 6 years old at the time, so I didn't understand what the fuck was going on. I didn't understand that they were framing a neighbor. I had no clue that was what was taking place. But I remember it. As an adult, I know damn fucking full well what they did. I never forgot what they did. So looking back on it, I know damn well what they did. But back then, I was only 6 years old. I was too damn young to understand what the fuck I was witnessing. Well, me and my family became targeted by those people right after that. Immediately after that. Why? Because I made some mention of what they did to my mother. And that was all it took. Me and my family became targeted by the Multnomah County pedophile sheriffs and the Portland pedophile police department and their civilian whores and their civilian brats. So I know how they do this shit. I've never been a part of this. I've never been a part of their system or their organization or whatever the fuck they call themselves. Although in 1973, the Dunham's family, for a short period of time, for about 2 months I would say, they were attempting to recruit me. They weren't outright telling me what's going on, but they were making certain things known during that time frame, and in such a way where it gave me the strongest impression they were trying to recruit me. But that changed when they realized that I still remembered what they did in 1971. That's when they started poisoning me. Matter of fact, they poisoned me, they poisoned my brother, they poisoned my father. And the police and county sheriff just covered it all up at the hospital, just like they always do. Just like they have done for fucking decades. Because law enforcement runs and controls the hospitals. The only people that get to work as doctors in hospitals are people that brown-nose the law enforcement. If you want to be a doctor in this world, and you want to get an education as a doctor and be a doctor, if you can't brown-nose for law enforcement, you won't be able to stay a doctor, because the police demand that doctors lie for their asses and cover their asses. That's how fascist the system is. So only fascists that are within the system, only people that are connected in some way to law enforcement can be doctors. You either need to have buddies in law enforcement, or you need to have relatives in law enforcement, or a person needs to be a girlfriend or something like that to somebody in law enforcement in order to be a doctor. Because not just anybody can be a doctor. Because that's how they guard their fascist fucking system. They keep people that are not a part of their fascist system out of these high-paying type jobs that have a great deal of power. And this is how law enforcement gets away with framing people. This is how law enforcement gets away with murdering people. O.J. Simpson's innocent. The man was targeted by a sting operation. His wife was recruited into an affair with a sting operative. He was... O.J. Simpson already had the L.A. police as private security guards. So the L.A. police had constant, full control over the area that O.J. Simpson lived the entire time. News media is very mum's the word about that. Y'all wonder the fuck why. Gee, the L.A. police are the ones that are responsible for the security of the grounds at the O.J. Simpson place. Gee, it makes you wonder how that glove got there. O.J. Simpson was framed by a fucking sting operation. His wife was recruited into a sting. She's not in law enforcement. Nicole Simpson is not in law enforcement. She's a wife that was married to O.J. Simpson, and she was recruited into an affair by a fucking sting operative named Ron Goldman. They're both still alive. They framed O.J. Simpson for a double murder that never even fucking took place because they're hiding the fact that Ron Goldman's a sting operative. They're hiding the fact that Nicole Simpson joined into their sting operation, and law enforcement quite regularly frames people for murders of spouses. They regularly do that. And it's nothing for law enforcement to just hand Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman a new identity and give them a new identity either in another state or in another country where they're living under an all-new identity. And then law enforcement will just pretend they were murdered and have their buddy in the coroner's office fill out paperwork faking an autopsy. And that's how easy it is for law enforcement to frame people for murders that don't even occur. Law enforcement makes their own operatives disappear so that they can frame people for murders. And it's nothing for law enforcement to do this. And as a matter of fact, they do it all the time. And what the fuck do you think the witness protection program is all about? What the fuck do you think that's about? That's about hiding people. Well, who is it that the FBI hides? Why, it's their own operatives. That's who they hide. That's how they get away with framing O.J. Simpson for murders. They can just give people they gave Nicole Simpson, Ron Goldman new identities. They're not dead. If they were dead, they'd show you. They would show you video of their bodies. They never did. You know why? Because they're not dead. They had a makeup artist slap some makeup on Ron Goldman's face and on Nicole Simpson's face, and then they just lay down on the floor while a police detective snapped a couple of photogenic photos. Oh, how law enforcement loves their photogenic photos, and only of their faces. Well, guess what? You can Google many examples of law enforcement faking deaths and using the same tactic where they'll smear blood on one of their sting operatives' face, and they'll have their sting operative lay down on the ground while they snap a few photogenic photos just of the person's face. When in fact the person's still alive, and the police just fake it so that they could frame the person's spouse for a murder or for attempted murder. There's an example on YouTube. It was on TV, as a matter of fact. I've seen it on TV. So this was actually, it was aired on TV. There was a priest or a preacher, a black preacher, that was acting as a sting operative with county sheriff officers. I don't remember what city. I don't remember what specific. I don't remember the specifics of it, but I do remember that there were county sheriff officers that recruited this preacher into a sting operation. They were setting up this preacher's wife for hit for hire type of a crime, where they were setting